And welcome back to more OC Motivator, where today I'm going to answer a question that I get asked very often from the young people who watch the channel. And I appreciate you all watching my old self talk about cars and beat up on dealerships on my other channel at OC Motivator. If you're not subscribed, go subscribe there. If you're not subscribed here, subscribe here. And this channel is, growing at a reasonable rate. I just haven't been filming enough, but today I thought I would answer the question that I get asked the most from kids, younger folks that are getting out of high school, that watch the channel, run into me at car meets, and it's a tough question because I know that I'm going to risk potentially changing the direction of your life. That's a responsibility. If you're giving me that much power, if there's a chance that you take my advice and follow a different path than what you were planning to follow before you asked that's a lot of responsibility you're handing me. If you're just looking for an opinion, you're going to do what you're going to do anyways, which is very likely, then that's great too. But I'm going to assume that what I tell you is going to have some impact. And if it has some impact, then I'm going to be cautious with what I say. But I'm also going to be who I am, which is direct and honest. And I'll tell you, when you ask me, should you go to college, or should I go in the military, or should I just go work? Should I go into a trade school, work with my hands? What should I do? And I'm going to tell you, every single person is different. But I'll start with one thing. If you have to take huge student loans, and you have yet to have proven an ability to hustle very, very hard, meaning you're working during high school, making money, starting a small little business on the side, which I had when I was 14 years old. If you don't have that inner hustle, that inner fire and motivation that you want to achieve it, you have to achieve it, you're willing to do everything that it takes to achieve your dreams and goals, and then you just go into college and take on a massive amount of debt, or straddle your parents with a massive amount of debt, then you're doing absolutely no one a favor. Because let me be very clear, unless you go to school to be a specialized trade, meaning a doctor, a lawyer, physicist, something that's very, very much requires college, there's a good chance if when you get out, you're going to go make $50,000, $60,000 or the equivalent thereof after figuring in inflation and other financial factors. You're going to be making $50,000, $60,000 a year, and you're going to get out with, let's say it's a few $100,000 in debt. So unless you have scholarships, unless you have the cash to pay it, unless even your folks are paying it, then I would tell you to join the military or go into a trade school, work with your hands, figure something out that's not going to put you in a position where you're going to be broke. Because if you think about it like this, let's just say hypothetically you 18 years old, you decide, man, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to go into the trades. I'm going to go into construction. I'm going to go into plumbing. I'm going to go into electrical. I'm going to go into something like that. Very needed career. And you start off at 18 and you hustle hard. You work so hard. You learn every aspect of that business. You take every class you possibly can. And you're only making, let's just say, $50,000 a year at 18 years old. $30,000 a year. Whatever the hell it is, it doesn't even matter. But you're learning a trade and you're actively focused on mastering that trade. Then think of it like this. As all your friends are graduating from college, around 21, 22 years old, you'll have been in your trade for 4 years, maybe a little bit more. If you've hustled hard and you've gone after the gold, you're likely by then in leadership, a manager, foreman, or you're at least at a higher pay scale than those starting off in a job. So 4 years from now, you could be making $100,000 a year working that job and still pursuing the ultimate goal of, let's say, starting your own electrician company or plumbing company, which is what my dad ended up doing. And he ended up being able to take great care of us our whole lives, provide for us. We weren't rich, we weren't poor, but we had a great life. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And then you've got me, who, because we didn't have a lot, but we lived in an area where on the other side of the tracks they had a lot, I was able to get exposed to massive amounts of wealth that I had never imagined existed. And after seeing that wealth from all these kids who had rich parents, I realized I really, really need to get wealthy. I need to figure out how to get these things that I really want. And for me, it was always cars. Obviously, driving my Lamborghini right now, I loved cars back then. And because of seeing all that and knowing that we didn't have those things, that I had to find a way to do it. And one day during career day, which was the annual best ditch day, like you could ditch school on career day and get away with it. So my buddy Tony and I decided we are going to do what we do every year. We are going to do the low crawl by all the classrooms, head back to where we had auto body shop, which was awesome back then in school, and we snuck to our car and we were going to sneak to the car and take off. But while we were doing the low crawl past a classroom, the teacher, and I swear to God I'm not lying, the man's name was Mr. Horny, Horney. He was the typing teacher. And he comes out and sees my friend Tony and I low crawling by the classroom under the windows, and stands us up and sits us down in the room on career day. And it was air traffic control career in that. It was air traffic controllers talking about, landing airplanes and keeping them separated and, running airports and all that fun stuff. And that seemed like the coolest thing in the world to me. I mean, it looked challenging. It looked like if you end up in the radar approach control, it was going to be like playing a big video game. And they said it was really hard. Most people fail. But mind you, I'm like 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, and I'm sitting in that class and had no clue what I wanted to do after school. Knew I was probably going to have to go to community college and do what everybody else does. And I decided that day, I want to be an air traffic controller. Like, this looks cool. And it wasn't like, maybe I want to be an air traffic controller. It was like, I want to be an air traffic controller. So after the class, I knew I was going to be in trouble. I was going to have to face the music for ditching. And Mr. Horny said, meet me after class. Instead of meeting with him, I went up to the air traffic controllers that were there, and they had a big fake runway laid out on a table, and rubber airplanes and these stands where they were putting them in the airspace and positioning them and giving examples of what the job was about. And I went up and said, how can I be an air traffic controller when I get out of high school? And they said, well, you can't unless you go to college, and then you can go to Emory-Riddle School, and you can, it's a process, or there's a shortcut. Like, I'm all about the shortcut. What's the shortcut? They said, go in the military. And I was like, okay, that's it? Yep. How much does that cost? Nothing. They pay you. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a deal. Awesome. And how much do you guys make? And back then, I mean, anything they told me would have been $1 million. And they said, basically it's a great pay, and I can't remember what number they said, but I mean, it was way more than my dad was making and way more than anybody I ever known at that point in my life, and especially considering I was delivering pizzas at the time. So I said, I'm doing this. And a week later, I accidentally crashed my Toyota 4x4 into a telephone pole when the car in front of me decided to arbitrarily stop for no reason while my head was up my ass looking out out the back window because I thought I left tint in the bed of the truck. Had to slam the brakes on. My big 36-inch tires squealed and locked up, and I had to yank the wheel or hit the people in the Jeep, and I took out a telephone pole, split that sucker in half, popped the water main, ended up with these beautiful scars right here. You might be able to see. Teeth went through the face. Ambulance took me away, stitched me up, and the next day I'm riding the bike. And my parents were on vacation in Florida or something, or can't remember where they were. And we had to call and tell them what I did. And I didn't want to tell them yet, so I asked my grandma, and I said, can we just not say anything until they get back? And she's like, okay. So I rode my bike around Uptown Whittier, and there was a recruiter station where they had Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Army. And rode my bike up, leaned up against the wall, walked all the way back to, of course, everybody wants to be a Marine. And the guy was scary as hell, mean, tough, like, just like my dad. I was like, wow. And this guy's telling me, we don't, you're not going to be an air traffic controller in here, and if you do, you're going to be on the front lines, and, it's not going to be the same, blah, blah, blah. And, 13 weeks basic training, and it's going to kick your ass. And son, you wait, you look like a wet noodle, it's probably not for you, boy. And I was like, wow, you suck. So I went to the Army, and they said, well, nope, you're going to be an infantry. There's no way you're going to be an air traffic controller. There's just no way. We don't have airports, man. You're going to be on the front lines, dodging bullets. I'm like, all right. So I went to the Navy, and they said, well, you're short. You might end up on a submarine. It's like, no thanks, man. And I get seasick. So I went to the Air Force. And, of course, air traffic control, Air Force. And Sergeant Bishop, the recruiter, couldn't have been more cool. Greatest guy ever. Explained to me that if I pass the ASVAB test, get high enough scores, that I can select my job. So I was like, sign me up for the test. Awesome. Your parents are going to need to sign for you to do a bunch of stuff because you're, 16 years old, but in the end, see how you score. Like, right on. Well, I take the ASVAB test, and I score good, but not good enough. Good enough to get in the Air Force, not good enough to be able to pre-select my job. And he says, but here's the deal. If you go in, when you go with a career counselor in basic training, you're going to be able to beg and talk them into giving you that job. Like, right on. I'll take the chance. This sounds good. Sounds like a decent risk. I scored high enough to where if they'll just give me a shot, then I'll be okay. I have great vision. Everything was good. Went into basic training, saw the career counselor. It was this just spectacular lady. This amazing person. I'll never forget her. African-American gal, and she literally just made my life what it is today. Because she said, you know what? I'm sorry. We just can't. I just can't give away that job. That job's highly sought after, and got people with higher scores and blah blah blah. And I remember saying, listen, his name was Jennifer. I said, listen, Jennifer, I don't know how to put this, but the only damn reason I came in the Air Force was to be an air traffic controller. And yes, I'm all about duty to the country, but I came in here because I want to be an air traffic controller. And if I don't get to be an air traffic controller, I'm going to spend 4 years of my life doing something that I don't want to do. And I'm going to ask you right now, is there somebody in your life, somebody along the way that helped you, that believed in you, that gave you a shot, that gave you a chance when no one else would, that saw something in you that no one else saw? And I'm like 18 at this point doing this plea. I said, you're that person for me. You're the person that can change my life forever. I'm begging you. Can you give me a chance? Please be that person to me, and I'll never forget you. And she says, give me a minute. She walks out. She's gone forever, it feels like. She comes back in. She takes this rubber stamp out. She starts stamping a bunch of papers, signs a few papers, hands me the papers and says, you better graduate. It's like 98% of the people don't. You better graduate. And I looked at her like, I got it? She goes, yes. Just don't let me down. You know, graduate, make it through, and be a great air traffic controller. And I was like, I will. I remember getting choked up, still chokes me up, and I walk out of there, and all I could think about during tech school, one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, craziest math, craziest training. I mean, just insane amount of training to actually go be an air traffic controller. And then once you get to an airport in the military, you're dealing with civilian and military, everything else. It's even harder to get certified and be able to plug in and actually do it. But then you get your badge with the control tower on it. And I end up in the radar approach control. Really hard stuff. And all I could think about was her the whole time. I couldn't fail. I stayed up all night at times practicing for tests, practicing non-radar techniques, mathematics, all this stuff. And learning airplane characteristics. I mean, everything you can imagine. I could not fail. Now I got crappy grades in high school, but I came in and crushed it in air traffic control school and spent the next 4 years as one of the youngest and most accomplished air traffic controllers in the Air Force, and it turned great. Afterwards, got out, and I was going to stay in. They offered me a big sign-on bonus or retention bonus to stay in the Air Force, to re-enlist for another 4 years. Called my mom, and she says, listen, they're not paying you any money. You're making like $300 every 2 weeks. You can make that in a week out here in civilian world, and you've got the talent, you've got the skill, son. So I was like, okay. I chose not to re-enlist and came out, called the 800 number to be an air traffic controller in the civilian world, and there was a freeze on hiring. And they said it was just a recording. Like, we're not hiring, period. There's a freeze, cutbacks, government cutbacks, nothing. And I was like, wonderful. So now I don't have a plan. So I remember driving to a gas station, saw a guy in a fancy Cadillac and with his wife with a big fur coat, and I was like, what do you do for a living? And he's like, I'm a real estate guy. He's got gold all over himself. Looked a little ridiculous. Definitely not somebody I would want to be, but somebody that looked like he had money. And he says, I'm in real estate. And I looked right behind him, and there was a big banner hanging from a building that said, free real estate school. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go check on this. I walked in. The owner of the company is named Danny Schweer. This dude told me that he'd give me the school for free. And I said, awesome. He says, but I need your credit card to charge $300. I was like, that's not free. He says, nah, $300. And then I give it back to you when you sell your first house. And I was like, okay, well, how many people sell their first house? He says, well, you figure if there's 10 people in the class, 8 or 9 of them are going to fail, never sell anything. And I've had classes where none of them stay in the business. And I was like, so most people aren't gonna. He goes, yeah, well, I've seen this movie before, 98% washout rate in the Air Force for air traffic controllers. I'll take the chance. I'll do it. And came in and, right away, made $50,000, $60,000. Then made $100,000. Then made $150,000. Then made $180,000. And then got into leadership at 27. And, now I'm an executive at a gargantuan company. And, last year I paid over $130,000 in taxes. So you can do the math, assuming I'm really good. I have a really good tax guy. And I really, really whittled down my tax liability legally, that it's a pretty significant income. Now, no college. But I share that story only because you have to have a path. Whatever the path is, the path has to be crystal clear. So if you don't know what you're going to do, and you go into college not knowing what the hell you want to do, and figuring you're going to figure it out there's a very high likelihood that you don't figure it out. And that at the end of that 4 years, you get out stumbling around looking for a job that's going to pay you $40,000 or $50,000, and you're going to have all these student loans. So unless you can go in and pay cash for school, unless you can go in knowing that you're absolutely going for something, I was going for air traffic control, then I would figure that out first before you start burning hundreds of thousands of dollars. Or go to community college and spend 2 years there and figure out what it is you want to do before you start burning through anyone's cash or taking on debt and loans, because that just doesn't make any sense. So my advice here is, whether you decide to join the military, whether you decide to go into a trade school, or whether you decide to go into college, know what the hell you're going after. Figure that out. Take a weekend, lock yourself in a room, and start watching videos and find the career that you're going to pursue. That way, everything you do for the next 3, 4, 5 years is focused in that direction. That way, you have a plan. I had a plan. Didn't intentionally plan to have a plan, but found something that excited me and then pursued it with absolute vigor and a veracity. There was no way it wasn't going to happen. And thanks to that wonderful lady, Jennifer, in San Antonio, Texas, in the career department of the Air Force, giving me a shot, it worked out. And then with Danny giving me a shot in real estate, that worked out. And to this day, I try to think the same. Whenever I meet with young folks who are trying to figure out what they're going to do, and I tell them the same thing: figure out what you want to do. And by the way, if you love cars, so you go, I'm going to go be a car mechanic, that might not be what you end up loving doing. So take a little bit extra time figuring out what you love to do. If you say, well, I love cars, so I want to be a race car driver. Okay, remember, there's a slim chance that happens. So you could spend a lot of time trying to do that and then not get anywhere. So find a legitimate career, a real career, as something that at least you know has a high income earning potential, and ask the question like I asked air traffic controllers: how much do you make? How much can you make? I swear I was the only person that wanted to know that. And I knew that it was way more than my dad made. And that was the bar. Because I had asked my parents, how much does Dad make? And why the hell don't we have all those cool cars all those other kids are getting dropped off in? So I figured out it comes down to earning potential. So whatever it is you pursue, if you're looking to have a Lamborghini, or you're looking to, it's my daughter in her Supra, or whatever things you want, then make sure you know what you want to do before you just go out spending money and time hoping it all works out. But Brad, my parents told me that I could figure it out in college. Well, good for them. I've told my daughter, I've told my wife, and they're going to wrestle me on this, but I have no desire to start dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars, because I'm not going to let her take loans and her not even know what the hell she wants to do, only for her to get out of college 4 years later and go end up working at a mall somewhere because she doesn't know what she wants to do. Plus taking classes that will never help her in what she wants to do, focusing on a major that will never help her to achieve what she wants to achieve. I mean, this is all common sense stuff, but I think things we need to know. We started back in the day with teachers having fun days in elementary school. What do you want to be when you grow up? And we would all talk about that. And we'd start off with all the boys wanted to be firemen and cops. Now they want to work at Starbucks and be baristas. But back then, we all want to be firemen and cops and army men and soldiers and superheroes and all that fun stuff. And now I don't know if anybody's asking the question. Even in elementary school, start making it a question that you ask yourself throughout your childhood. What do I want to be? And start looking at who you respect the most, and then go for it. And then find out what the quickest way is to get there, and frankly, the cheapest way to get there, and then depend wholly on your strength and abilities and desire to achieve it, and then give it everything you've got. So hopefully that answers your question. I know it took a while to get there, and I gave you guys the roundabout with the story, but I wanted you to really understand that this isn't about telling you what to do. It's about helping you find your way. So with that, please like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.